meeting this evening. Right, start the meeting. I would like to advise all present that in order to improve engagement in the democratic process, tonight's meeting will be recorded with audio recording being published on the council website. The meeting will also be filmed and live streamed. If any members of the public do not wish to be filmed, I would like to give you the opportunity to leave the chamber now if you wish. Members are also reminded to respect other members when they are talking and do not speak across the chamber when other members are speaking. All requests to speak must go through me. I would also like to remind members to please stand and use their microphone when speaking. And members are also reminded to turn mobile phones off or put them on silent. Before we begin this evening's meeting, I would like to ask Reverend John Guest to lead us in prayer.
Mr Mayor, Councillor and officers, ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct privilege to lead you as Mayor's chaplain in the prayers at the beginning of this full council meeting. Although these prayers will be in the Christian tradition, can I assure you that my care extends to those of all faiths and none. I'm here to serve you to the best of my ability. Whatever your beliefs, can I ask if you feel able to add an amen of agreement at the end of this prayer? If you are able to, will you please stand? Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, we offer you our thanks and praise this evening that we can meet in this place and exercise our democratic right to debate and discuss the development and management of this wonderful borough of Thurrock. Give us the grace to do so with humility and kindness, recognising both the serious responsibilities of our office and the needs and vulnerabilities of those we are called to govern. Guide the speech of those who address us tonight, that their words may be strong enough to matter and sweet enough to eat. Give us all listening minds and caring hearts, and may we go to our beds at the end of this evening with the satisfaction of knowing we have given of our best. We make this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. You're quite welcome to stay, but if you need to get away at some stage, by all means.
Thank you.
We now move on to apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors Cleadhill and Manning. Are there any further apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Fletcher will be here, but he's running late.
Councillor Bill.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Duffy.
Councillor Redson.
Councillor McPherson.
Councillor Davis.
Councillor Main, Councillor Churchman, Councillor Haig and Councillor Kelly.
Right, we now move on to the minutes of the meeting of Annual Council held on the 22nd of May 2019 be approved as a correct record as shown on pages 7 to 18 of the agenda. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Are there any comments on the accuracy of the meeting, of the minutes? The minutes are approved. 3, items of urgent business. I have not agreed to the consideration of any item of urgent business. Item 4, declarations of interest. May I have any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to declare that on the Cabinet Portfolio Holders report and the questions from councillors, I linked to current interest as I work at Treetop Special School.
Any other declarations of interest? Thank you. We now move on to my announcements. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Oliver Busby, who's with us tonight. She's a local girl from the Gable Hall School and has won 2 championships and the World Championship in the USA. In the USA in weightlifting. We are arranging to have a membership vase engraved in recognition of her achievements, and I will be invited to tea in the Mayor's Parlour, and we will be presenting the vase at next full council. So I don't know whether it's I know a little bit about somewhere. Well done, Olivia. You made Thurrock proud. But the only other thing I will make in my mayor's statement is just the fact that by the end of this month, I will have attended 22 events in my first month as mayor, and next month's calendar is looking even busier. So I'm enjoying myself, but I won't go into any further detail at this stage. Moving on to Councillor Hebb, on behalf of the leader, do you wish to make any announcements?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Councillor Glead has asked me to make a few remarks and announcements. I'll go through that duly. So this Saturday, Thurrock residents and communities across the United Kingdom will celebrate Windrush Day. It's one of the men, women and children who stepped off the Empire Windrush at the Port of Tilbury on the 22nd of June 1948, as well as the legacy of the Windrush generation and their descendants. The Caribbean migrants on board the Empire Windrush, comprising of painters, musicians, farmers and carpenters, spent 30 days at sea in order to come to the United Kingdom and seize the opportunity to influence sport, culture, health, care, industry and our communities. Some had served along the Allied forces during the Second World War, with many then providing much needed labour and support to assist in the rebuilding efforts of post-war Britain. Thurrock was the point where they disembarked. They took their first steps on British soil as they set off on their new lives. We are clearly proud of that role the borough played in that important story, and will mark the anniversary of such an important event. Her Majesty's Government granted funding of £50,000, which has been allocated annually to Windrush Day grant scheme, of which Thurrock has benefited this year. Educational workshops have been held over the past few months, and Windrush Day celebrations will conclude with the Tilbury Carnival on Saturday the 20th of July. This will be hosted by a number of local groups, including Tilbury-on-Thames Trust, Kinetica, the Port of Tilbury, Tilbury Riverside Project and the One Community Development Trust, alongside Thurrock Council. Also next week, Mr Mayor, we will be commemorating Armed Forces Day with a series of events around the borough. On Monday we will raise the flag here at civic offices, and this Sunday there is a special event taking place at Coldhouse Hall and Thurrock Museum. We'll also be holding a special exhibition looking at Thurrock's place in the peacetime events which immediately followed the First World War. In this year, as we remember the events of 75 years ago, when thousands of brave young men stormed the beaches of Normandy in one of the largest amphibious assaults in history, and going on to liberate France and much of Europe, and begins the events which brought an end to the Second World War. And of course we will be discussing and debating the motion later this evening, Mr Mayor, on that very subject. You're probably wondering why the council agenda is a week early. There is a good reason for that. This council has been put forward and secured a nomination for Council of the Year in the Municipal Journal Local Government Achievement Awards. Simply put, that isn't something that every council gets onto. It is very good that the council has managed to become a candidate at the front table and a potential winner of such a prestigious award. There's a number of prizes which the authority is up for: care and health integration, innovation and finance, and the senior leadership team. Clearly making the short list is testament to anyone and everyone in the authority, wherever they work, and we'll obviously hold our breath to see whether we win that prestigious award. Moving on, I'm pleased to announce, something that I'm very pleased to announce actually, we're currently working on a new competition with 2 schools across the borough to pilot a clean air initiative. It's something that we were keen to support. A lady who actually lives in Ironwood, Sandpole West, reached out to us with an initiative and an idea of how we can engage young minds at schools to develop a poster and a load of artwork and stuff that they can present at schools about clean air, turning our engines off, not keeping engines running idly, etc. That lady is, I hope she doesn't mind my mentioning the name, I think this is Orla Thornton. I will let her know I mentioned her earlier. That idea has been born. It has then gone into the Environment Department, it's then gone into the Education Department, and that collaboration is happening. So there's 2 schools that are piloting it. We're hoping that encourages young minds to get into the discussion early on in life about clean air and improving air quality. That's happening in 2 schools across the borough, and hopefully it will be a good platform to move on with. Since April 2019, I have a clean cut fit out update, and since 2019, 649 potholes have been filled, every one within the agreed time frames. Believe it or not, 328 fly tips have been cleared, just showing how much people are still disregarding our borough. We are going to keep on at this, and we are going to make sure that people that do fly tip get the appropriate sanctions. We've collected 150 hippopotamuses worth of waste from across the borough through street cleaning and grounds maintenances. I didn't do the maths, but apparently it's 150 hippopotamuses. And 99% of household bins have been collected on the correct day. Mr Mayor, that's everything that Councillor Gedfield wants me to articulate.
Thanks, Councillor. We now move on to questions from members of the public. 3 questions have been submitted and accepted by the Magistrate Officer. These are set out on page 19 of the agenda. Question 3 has now been withdrawn by Ms Swash due to family illness. I'd like to hope that everything improves for her. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I will ask that the questioner read out their question when asked to do so. We have up to 30 minutes for this item, therefore can I please ask that the questioner and member be as brief as possible in their questions to ensure that we cover as many of them as submitted tonight. I'd also inform the questionnaire that any supplementary question they may ask should not take the form of a statement and must be related to the original question or the answer that is given. Can I ask the Democratic Services?
He's there. He's there.
Oh. Mr Perry, would you please read out your question to Councillor Johnson and set out on page 19 of the agenda?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Johnson, last year I asked a question regarding the protection of grass verges from being used as parking for cars, etc. Since then, the situation in Broxton Drive has not changed at all. If anything, it has got worse. Can you tell me why no action has been taken to protect the grass verges in Broxton Drive?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Perry, for your question. Any action taken by this council is relying on public and local residents reporting concerns. And as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any further comments in the last 12 months about Broxton Drive, but obviously that may have been whilst I wasn't here. However, I do believe, following the concerns you've raised, that the housing officers have contacted you and arranged an appointment with you to discuss it further. And once that's happened, they'll report it back to me, and then we can obviously discuss it from there. Is that the case? Have they made contact with you?
My believe they're meeting me tomorrow.
Okay.
Councillor Perry, sorry, Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry, do you wish to pose a supplementary question at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor, do you accept that these verges cannot be both grass verges and car parks? They can only successfully be one or the other. If the council decides to allow them to be used as a car park facility, then they should be made fit for that purpose. If they are to continue as grass verges, would you agree they should be adequately protected?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I agree 100%, Mr. Perry, that there must be one thing or the other. I'm sure we might be able to mix and match at some point along there, but they do need to be deciding what they are. I think the decision will probably go through the environment portfolio, wondering if that is going to be the case to change them. But yes, I agree with you. There should be one thing or the other. We will protect them if it is only going to be grass verges.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Second question. I understand it was meant to be by Mr. Sutley, and I understand he's unable to attend. So can I ask Mr. Calder to stand to ask the question?
Good evening.
Mr. Crawley, could I ask you to the question of Councillor Cox will set on page 19 of the agenda?
Yeah, could I ask you to turn your microphone up? We can't hear it back then, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. I'd rather sit, if that's okay.
Yes, Bob.
Thank you. Mulberry Harbour played a crucial role in the preparations for D-Day landings during World War II. I'm sure some of you here might recall that. In 1994, a plaque was unveiled to commemorate Thurrock's role in helping build Mulberry Harbour. And the gardens next to this building were named Mulberry Square to mark this. A tree was planted. It was attended by the great and good, but could the portfolio holder explain why building a new council office is more important than protecting and honouring Thurrock's heritage and open spaces? Thank you.
Councillor Cox will please respond.
Thank you very much for your question. I'm sure we're going to come later to some other items, so this is on the agenda later in the meeting. But under the current approach, you are correct, the proposals of Mulberry Square would be redeveloped. The scheme allows provision for new gardens for ceremonial and landscaping elsewhere in a close vicinity, including the public seating, so we haven't lost anything. Memorial benches will be located in this new provided square and will be newly landscaped areas. However, the Thurrock's contribution to the D-Day landings, which I wrote 1 or 2 weeks ago to represent the Member of Parliament Act, was which is really important to the people of Thurrock and will live on whatever happens. And I welcome your views, including Mr. Sutton's views, to achieve an enhanced public image of what Thurrock did during the D-Day landings.
Mr. Calder, do you wish to propose a supplementary question?
Yes, please. I represent many older people in this town with great memories of the Second World War, etc. I also have yet to find one of them who agree with what they now term as a vanity project. And could one, Mr. Coxwell, please explain to me why he thinks that spending £10 million of the townspeople of Thurrock hard-earned money on a vanity project?
Excuse me.
Well, I don't call it a vanity project. I call it Grays Town Centre regeneration. Grays Town Centre regeneration is wanted by all these people. We've been voting for it over and over again since 2014, and the civic offices relocation is absolutely pivotal to this. With nearly millions and millions, which if you stay later you will hear the debate, will be spent on Grays Town Centre regeneration. We've been so many times, how many questions have been here about how the Grace Town Centre's not being done, we can't walk down the High Street, Grace South doesn't work right. We need to actually deliver our bit of public body to make the civic capital proud to actually come to, instead of people staying away over and over again, even this last election. Oh, I don't go to Graves, I don't go to Graves. We have an entrance now that's not in the right place, because it has opposite now a fantastic new building, so we need to try and reconfigure the entrance. We've got a registry office, and we have ceremonies week in, week out for nationalising people who are moving into this country and proud, and have a massive ceremony that's in an ante-room upstairs, third right, over and done with, where we can actually have a proper civic ceremonies for these great people who have actually wanted to take a British passport. This has all been done in. There's a great advantage to this, and it's not a vanity project. The £10 million is coming down after we sell this area. No, I'm just answering the question.
No, I understand.
I've got to go through the points, and this is really important, because over and over again, since 2014...
Councillor Coxall, will you let me speak? Unfortunately, I now realise that the supplementary question that was asked wasn't relating to the original question. So I have given you some leeway to answer it.
Excellent.
But that question should not have been allowed. That was my error at that time, and I am putting it right now by saying that the debate is now finished, or the question is now finished on that. So thank you very much, and thank you for asking your question.
You must forgive me about the protocol.
I'm sorry, Mr. Calder. I've called an end to your question. You better to.
Very one-sided to me, sir.
Thank you very much. That's really good. I like that. I get called up on site. If you want to know what you called me, I can happily refer to the group.
Mr. Coxall, Councillor Coxall, sorry. Can you refrain? We now move on to item 7, petition from members of the public and councillors. Please be advised that in accordance with the council petition scheme, 2 notices of petition have been received this evening. I would ask that Democratic Services collect the petition after it has been presented. Mr. Norrington, would you please present your petition in regard to the Thurrock Sports Council? You have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
We are making this presentation. We are concerned that due to lack of funding, the Sports Council is no longer able to fulfil its goals. Funding has been reduced significantly over the last 20 years, from well over £20,000 per annum to £5,376 for the current period. Clearly, this does not demonstrate support for sporting activities in Thurrock. Indeed, the Council has passed over the grant funding process to the CBS, an organisation that, in our opinion, has greater interest in our activities or sport in general. We are concerned about the ever-improving standards for facilities available, particularly bowls, cricket, football. Greens and pitches are generally substandard in Thurrock. With the ever-increasing problems with obesity, Thurrock is one of the worst areas, coupled with the social issues arising from children and young adults being disengaged from society. This does not make Thurrock an attractive borough to live in. We have now reached the point of no return. It's time for the council to face up to these issues, not pretend they do not exist. The Sports Council is now 55 years old. When the Sports Council was set up, it had excellent support from the council, resulting in support for clubs and individuals. Sadly, over the years, the council has distanced itself from the Sports Council and now provides little or no support. The Thurrock Sports Council in past years had a proud history of running many events, ethics games and investment sports, plus many others. We are aware in today's environment of the importance of sport and leisure activities to tackle ever-growing problems of obesity and social behaviour. The population in Thurrock has increased increased significantly over the past few years and is projected to carry on increasing. It is evident that an increase in population is going to require additional and a greater variety of facilities, not less. This is a time bomb awaiting to explode. You will be leaving your successors an unenviable task in the future. It is in your hands. You can either support sport, encourage sporting activities, or allow it to shrink when only more affluent will participate. This will clearly have serious long-term social issues. It is time to act now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Move on to our second petition. Councillor John Kent, would you please present the petition calling for a pedestrian crossing around the junction of Broadway, Gypsy Lane and East Thurrock Road in Grays? That's 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is indeed what this petition is calling for. Anybody who lives in Grays, drives around Grays, knows just how dangerous that junction is, the junction of Whitehall Lane, East Thurrock Road, Gypsy Lane and Broadway. The junction is becoming ever busier, and we now routinely have heavy goods vehicles that are flouting the 7.5-tonne weight restriction. We have an increasing elderly population in that area, and it's becoming ever more difficult for people to safely get across the road. That, in a nutshell, is what the petition, which has been fostered by the Orchards Forum, is asking for. The consideration is given to a much needed, much overdue pedestrian crossing somewhere in that junction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, just on a point of order on the previous petition, could I ask whether or not that met the threshold for debate in council, and if it did, whether or not that would be an automatic process for that debate to be put onto a council agenda?
If I may, what will happen now, we've got a list here of 1547 signatures. The Democratic Services team will cross-reference these and check these, and when we verify whether it's 1500 or above, we shall progress it. It will take a week or so to progress that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 8, update report in respect of those petitions presented at full council and council offices. This report can be found on pages 21 and 22 of the agenda and is for information on the status of the petitions handed in at council meetings and council offices. Moving on to item 9, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Councillor Head, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Potterbury, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Spillman, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to, we'll be removing Gary Byrne from Borough Thames Task Force, and we're going to be offering that place to the independent committee with Councillor Fraser, Massey, if we will accept it. And it will be accepted, so that's brilliant. The second one, we will be taking, due to a conflict in Oxford Health and Wellbeing, we need to take Councillor Rao off the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I'll be replacing Councillor Rao. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Are members of the room with the nominations made?
Agree.
Moving on to item 10, report to approve the appointment of the interim director of Children's Services. Members would have received an amended report via email this morning in relation to this item. It will be this amended report, which you can also find on your desks, that we will discuss tonight. Councillor Head.
Mr. Mayor. Apologies, Mr. Mayor. Under Chapter 2, Part 2, Section 16.1M, I would like to request that we have a short adjournment in order for the Labour Group to be fully briefed by the Chief Executive on the report. We did only receive this report sort of just before midday today, so I would like to make that request, please.
Second.
it's a little bit out of the order, but as we are ahead of time to the programme, I'm happy to suspend the meeting for 5 minutes for you to get that through. It has been available since this morning. I realise by the time we actually close and vacate the chamber room, perhaps I was a bit tight with 5 minutes. So we are in a schedule. I am prepared to extend that to 10 minutes, but I think that's sufficient. You will have had to read it. There may be some questions you want, so I'll suspend the meeting for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Where's the mayor?
report on the appointment of the Interim Director of Children's Services. Councillor Head, would you please introduce the amended report and have 5 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think before we begin, certainly, I think this needs saying. The gentleman who is named in this paper is Gentleman Roger Harris, to which we know Roger. I'm not going to speak on behalf, but I think I probably can say on behalf of all 3 groups, and probably Councillor may see in time if he doesn't already know Roger. Roger is someone who's demonstrated absolutely spectacular capability and care for everything he has done, and I think we can safely say that all 49 councillors in this chamber hold him in nothing but the highest regard and the highest esteem. Mr. Mayor, we find ourselves in a somewhat unique situation. 49 councillors have been given effectively less than 48 hours, less of a deadline, to appoint a Director of Children's Services, a role that we knew was being vacated about 3 months ago. It is literally perhaps some of the most significant remodelling of services in a number of years. Crudely put, sort of 75% of services in one directorate, and again spending power equally. The democratic oversight has been virtually nil. However, the candid reality of the situation is that we do have to have a Director of Children's Services by midnight Sunday. And why are we in this situation? The truth of the matter is that elected members don't have the authority or control over appointments and general structure. That is a duty in the current remit of the Head of Paid Service to restructure in line with the Constitution, which, let's be very clear, has been done. However, this is where the conundrum comes into it. As elected members, the 49 of us are asked to approve said appointments. However, we haven't been able to challenge, although I gather Jane's German enabled a bit of that for them. We haven't been able to challenge, provide opinion and examine, but we're still being asked to approve. That leads to a bit of a conflict, I suppose, in one that 49 councillors are legally. We haven't been able to challenge, etc., but we've got to appoint. But also we have a duty as corporate parents. So all 49 of us are corporate parents, and there's 2 things which really stick in my mind in this particular matter, is that as corporate parents we need to satisfy ourselves that the placeholder, that the structure underneath and around supports that individual to deliver what is required. Furthermore, I believe that we also have an element of duty of care to whoever takes over such a role, to make sure that that person is as supported as well. So this isn't just about us and 49 councillors, this is also about the placeholder. Now I do want to stress, and I mean this head, heart and soul, I do believe that I completely believe that everything that I've just said has been considered already by the paid staff. I do. Genuinely I do. But as corporate parents, we do need that level of oversight. Do I think that 3 months is enough time to consult? I do. PERDA doesn't exclude us from extraordinary full councils of consultation. Do I think that Councillor Canarde, as Chair of Corporate Parenting, may have had an input? Do I think the portfolio holders, group leaders? I do. Do I really appreciate this all being so last minute? I don't. The paper tonight, in Councillor Bedford's name only, is here pretty much under duress. The original paper, which is obviously now unpublished, has been amended considerably, so this is its 3rd iteration now. Originally we were being asked to, again, I put the element on the word approve an appointment to a directorate that hadn't existed before that paper was published, People's, Children's and Housing. It's very significant. And these amendments have come about through effectively a number of interactions between myself, Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Apothecary, and Councillor Spillman, and Councillor Canarde, and Councillor Little as well. We called a meeting, and the professional team were happy to acquiesce. There were significant concerns raised. I'm not going to speak for the 3 groups. I'm sure you may have your own points to raise. We did raise the point about consolidating everything into one directorate without full examination. Less than 45% of us sitting in this room now will remember a People Services Directorate before. There were reasons probably, or there were reasons why we did something different pretty much straight after. The times have changed, right? I need to be balanced on this. The times have changed, structures have changed, the performance of council have changed considerably. But we need to examine and make sure that we do that duty of care. So Cabinet originally called for the revocation of the report and an emergency general services committee and then publish that paper accordingly, and clearly that didn't happen in the way that Cabinet wanted. We are here tonight being asked to approve something without that scrutiny, but I'll go back to it. The blunt truth is we have to have a DCS. There is a way that we can do all of that. One, we appoint an interim DCS for someone who has that obligated authority. There's a number of reasons articulated in the report, which I'm sure you've all cross-examined in your own groups. That enables us to have that role in place. But the thing that's very important in this recommendation is that it's calling for a General Services Committee to be held as soon as possible for a full examination of the structure and everything underneath it. I have to reiterate, it isn't in our authority to create these structures. As corporate parents, I think the three of us have argued that we need to do something a little bit different on this one. So in the spirit of what I've outlined, obviously you'll be taking the paper as you will. Our group are doing the same. We think this does do the right thing ahead of Sunday, but equally it's got the safeguard in it to make sure that cross-party members' input, examination of the proposals can go ahead as quickly and prudently as possible, and there we are.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pothbury, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. As councillors, we have a duty to ask difficult questions, to hold decisions to account, and to speak truth to power. We have a duty to speak out. We have a duty to raise red flags when we think something is wrong. All of the inquiries and reports into avoidable tragedies teach us one simple message. These things happen when people don't speak up. I have grave reservations about this proposal. I do not believe that placing responsibility for children's social care, health, education, adult social care and housing onto one person's shoulders is a responsible way to protect children, vulnerable adults or the homeless in this borough. I urge every elected member here to think really long and really hard if this is the best thing for those vulnerable people and those children at risk who we have a duty to protect and care for. Now, you may think long and hard, you may consider this and you may come to a different conclusion to me, and that's fine. But please remember that when you're making this decision, it is not your role to minimise the embarrassment of those whose mistakes have brought us here, or to accept the only option on the table because all other options have been denied to you. It is your role to protect the vulnerable in the way you think most effective. If you believe this is the way forward, this proposal is the most effective way forward, then please support the report. If, however, you have concerns that this is not the best option, that this is not the best solution that we could have come up with in this process, then I urge you to vote against the report.
Thank you, Councillor Pothbury. Councillor Spurwell, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this isn't the finest hour, is it, really, of this council? And I'm being asked, and my group got a free vote on this because of the issue, I think it's important, and I know that the Labour group agree as well. Now, I'm being asked to recommend the appointment of an officer, and I will say about the officer, is officer I've worked with closely ever since I've become a councillor, and I hold in the highest regard. A man of true integrity and of, a lot of ability. So it's not the officer in question, as we all agree. Now, I'm being asked to recommend in all but name, the combining of several departments, because one director is going to have strategic control of all of them, and I'm being asked to do that without having any scrutiny of what systems are going to be put in place underneath that to make sure that it works effectively and is safe and deals with the intrinsic risk factors of any major change of structure in any organisation. Now, I understand that Herder may have caused some slight problems and that there's constitutional things that we can sort out. But when I also find out that it's not just me as the the third group in the chamber, the second group in the chamber looked at it, and I understand that until a very late time, the actual administration state that they haven't had foresight of these things. It really worries me because there's no democratic accountability now for this decision. You know, if the administration had looked at it and had to force it through in a quick period, then there would have been some democratic accountability. If it went wrong, they would have been held democratically accountable for it. And the problem is that that isn't going to happen in this case. I cannot, unlike Jane, I am prepared to accept this change of structure as long as there are the proper safeguards underneath it. I'm not against this in principle because directors are strategic. You know, it's not like Roger is going out on a daily basis visiting people's homes to make sure children are okay. No, he makes strategic decisions. But I have to know that the layers and the safeguards are there underneath. Now, I cannot recommend and approve this appointment for those reasons. And I feel as though I've been made to come to the chamber and vote. And whichever way I vote tonight is a shoddy outcome for Thurrock. And I'm really not happy about that. And it shouldn't be the case that we should be here tonight doing this, but it is what it is, and we are where we are. And we need to make sure that with upcoming appointments, this doesn't happen again. And have better communication between administration and groups. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Millman. Councillor Okanali, as Chair of the Children's Service and Overview and Scrutiny Committee, do you wish to speak?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As everybody has agreed, this is where we are. And we've had the fact that, I mean, to be honest with you, I've only just realized that the retirement of Rory, and as I am a person, I would just like to wish him well in retirement, to start with. With reluctance, I will be agreeing to this recommendation with reluctance because I have a lot of mixed feelings, as you know, everybody has expressed. But I believe that because this is where we are, we just need to be constructively doing things better and not just fold our arms. Nobody's folding their arms, but we're talking. Why am I doing reluctantly? While I have confidence in the capability of the proposed interim director to help us fulfill the statutory functions and comply with the Children's Act 2004, I feel it would be a situation of overstretching the capacity of one director, whose attention would have to be divided in him being responsible for his substantive role as a chief officer responsible for adult social care, health and housing. But I do take on the chief executive undertaking that we're going to be moving into properly discussing the future of the roles and of the appointment of the permanent DCS, and making sure that safeguarding children is utmost on our agenda, as well as the health and well-being of adults. So this is my point. Thank you to our leader who has given us 3 votes. I might well be the only one voting this way, but this is where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Okanali. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've all seen press reports that there's been some sort of standoff between elected members and officers regarding the restructure. And to an extent this is true, and it's highly regrettable. Chief officers, statutory or otherwise, run some of the most important services that our constituents use, and certainly our constituents pay for this place and for all the people in it. All 49 of us have got a stake in what the top tier of the council management do. That's my view in opposition, it's my view in administration. And it's only right that there is democratic oversight over these decisions. And that is not what has happened. I think this situation is regrettable for two reasons. Firstly, it was avoidable. The opposition were not adequately consulted, the administration was not adequately consulted. Even I, as one of the 3 cabinet members who have been charged with the democratic oversight of this department, was not asked my opinion. I've never known such a massive issue that was so avoidable. We've got a cross-party General Services Committee that easily could have met to provide democratic oversight on this issue, and even though that was the suggestion made by the Cabinet, that is not the action that was taken. Secondly, it projects an unreasonable us and them attitude between members and officers. To be clear, the restructure that was originally proposed is not unacceptable to me because of the people involved. Roger Harris is one of the most dedicated and capable public servants I've ever had the privilege of working with. My complaint with this process is with the process, not with the people. To be clear, it's right that the law is structured in such a way that councils have a head of paid service to discharge HR functions. But we have to respect this is a political and democratic environment, and decisions of such a magnitude must involve all members. We're now in a situation where some very extreme circumstances could happen as a result, and we clearly need a cross-party conversation about how we are going to ensure that the Constitution and the General Services Committee functions in a better way for all members in the future. The alternative paper that has been tabled this evening is time limited, 6 months. It is limited in scope only to statutory functions and does refer the whole issue to the General Services Committee. I feel this strikes a good balance as an interim measure while members consider the possible long-term remedies to this situation. And I would say that we have had a department like this before. Under the last Labour administration, and there are 9 councillors who voted for it, creating a People Services Directorate. It didn't have housing, but it did have public protection. It was under Joe Olsen. That collapsed. It was a disaster, mainly because I do not believe it was staffed by adequate individuals, and it was not in a state at the time, as we were going through certain council changes, able to cope. These are conversations that we need to have. It might be possible this structure could work, this structure might not work, and that is why we need to have the conversation, and that is why all 49 members now, on behalf of 160,000 people we represent, need to make sure we realign internal processes to make sure this does not happen again.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Try not to echo too many of the points already been made. I think it's clear to all of us we should not be here in this situation today. We're being asked to effectively to have a free vote in which there is no right answer. I'd like to be very clear, certainly I can only speak for myself, but I think it'd be okay. This has nothing to do with the individual that we're looking to appoint. This has everything to do with the support, the structure that will be given to that individual to actually do the job at a particularly critical time, given we're expecting an Ofsted inspection to come up. I don't think anybody here, given the proper run at the decision, would think that adding this on to his existing responsibilities will be particularly good for Roger, and that remains a concern. What also remains a concern is I'm not sure what, if anything, was done between the resignation and now to actually find an alternative solution. That concerns me. The lack of consultation with the administration or the opposition concerns me greatly, and I think any follow-up to this decision that we make tonight needs to include a thorough review of what went wrong and how we put it right. I think there should be an investigation of what exactly happened between Rory Patterson's retirement decision and where we are now. That said, I think, as I understand it, if we don't support this motion tonight, the decision will be taken out of our hands. So I think what we're left with is we either support a fairly meaningless vote, or we vote with our feet and let the administration, not the administration, but let the officers know exactly how we feel about being put in this situation. Thank you.
Councillor Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, I would have thought I would have been able to have spoken straight on to Councillor Bookie as being portfolio holder and directly affected by what has happened. firstly, like everyone else, and Jane and Bookie have both said, none of us are, like being in this situation, and it's not a reflection on Roger at all, but on the actual process that has happened. But I will support this paper tonight. Now, I know as much as hopefully more about all the children in our care than most of you, because I'm in that position all the time. I put an awful lot of time, I'm in and out of the council offices, I know children in care, I meet them personally, goes on plans, I'm all over. In fact, I go to Lakeside, I go, hello miss, it's like that, I've got to know them. And the children are very important to me. And also I have to look at the fact that we are a borough that is getting more and more populated, which again will increase the amount of children coming through children's services. That just figures. And I too think that perhaps this should have been looked at differently and we should have been consulted. And I was upset, and I've said to the Chief Exec, I would have at least have liked a phone call to have been told what was happening, and I was disappointed. But the Chief Officer and myself have spoken since, and if we don't accept this paper tonight in its redone version, we will be, it will be done to us rather than we have gone with it. And because it is a legal responsibility, by Sunday evening we have to have a Director of Children's Services. On that point, I have had several conversations with the Chief Executive Office, and I've had obviously a chat to quite a few of the staff. And the Chief Executive Officer has promised me that she too will put in as many hours as possible to support Roger in this strategic role, which I thought was very good. That does slightly, whatever. But, I think that is at least a good move. And as I say, the General Services Committee, hopefully, as soon as possible, will be meeting to have a look at this. But I think at the moment, members, we are all corporate parents. We need to have a director in place. So I do think, and I would urge you, though I'm not that happy with it, that we do actually appoint Roger in the interim period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John Kent.
I think Councillor Cockshaw was before me, Mr. Mayor.
I should probably you, sir.
You're the first one on the list, but...
No, we'll go ahead. I've known Roger since he started here in, I think it was 2008, and as everybody has said, Roger has been a fine officer. He's got many fantastic qualities, and I wouldn't wish anything that happens here tonight to in any way damage Roger, his reputation, and the absolute commitment that he has for Thurrock, because I think it goes without saying. I think there are an awful lot of questions that arise from what we've heard tonight and the two papers that we've had. And I have to say that when Councillors Howden and Councillor Little tell us that they were not consulted, I believe them without question. I do have to ask the question though, why didn't they ask what the process was? Why didn't they come forward as portfolio holders and exert some influence? Because that's part of the role. I have to say that we're told that Rory Patterson announced that he was retiring on the 25th of March. We're told that there have been consultations, formal consultations with key staff, directors board, senior and middle management through the period April and May. Response from officers across senior leadership team and services was supportive, and a meeting was held with group leaders 2 days ago. Mr. Mayor, that is not acceptable. That is treating members of this authority with utter contempt, and it's not good enough. It happens here far, far too often. I've been a member here for 26 years, and I've been involved with the appointment of many, many senior officers. I know what the Constitution says. I know that the head of paid service is responsible for appointing officers. I have not known a situation until the last couple of years where we haven't had interviews conducted by members of this authority for any officer that we've appointed. When Roger was appointed to his current role, he was an internal applicant. He was the only applicant for that role, but we still carried out a full interview process. When Carmel Littleton was appointed as DCS at the same time, an internal appointment, the only appointment, we carried out a full interview process. David Lawson, sitting there as our monitoring officer, an internal applicant, the only applicant, we still carried out a full interview process. It is disgraceful that members are continually being sidelined. Frankly, it is just not good enough, Mr. Mayor, and it has to stop. We come to, for me, no, sorry, something that Councillor Howden said, which is absolutely right. Good authorities run when there is a strong partnership between senior members and senior officers. It is quite clear to everybody here that that partnership at the moment in this authority isn't working, and it's going to need a lot of hard graft to get it back on track, and I hope everybody's willing to do that. So we come to the only thing that really matters. It's not about the person and it's not about the process. It's about whether we come to the right decision or not. And for me, genuinely, I do not believe that appointing somebody to the DCS role, even if it's only for 6 months, somebody who would in effect be a part-time director of children's services is good enough for this authority or good enough for the children of Thurrock, so I will not be supporting it. I think, listening to what Councillor Fletcher said, it's going to be done to us anyway. You know, frankly, I want to stand up and do the right thing. If somebody else wants to come and override it, then that's a matter for them.
Thank you, Councillor.
So, Mr. Mayor, point of order, please. Point of order, just on point of clarification, just to aid Councillor Kent. The reason myself and Councillor Little were not further involved originally was because when we knew we would require an interim officer following the departure of Rory Patterson, we knew there were a number of very capable officers who could do an interim role. We were happy to wait for it to come to General Services Committee, because the very fact is, it's inconceivable to me that it wouldn't come to the General Services Committee, because as he said, that is how it's always been done.
Thank you,
It's
Councillor.
inconceivable that that wouldn't have happened.
Councillor Garish.
Just go on, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think, like many councillors here this evening, I've struggled considerably with this item, and it hasn't been easy to come to a conclusion at all. But I think that safeguarding the borough's children is the foremost responsibility that we have as a council. And if I cut to the chase, I don't see how we can have any confidence that a single person, regardless of how talented that person is, and I think there's general consensus across the chamber that the person that's involved in these discussions is one of the most talented officers that we have at the Borough Council. But I don't see how we can have confidence that a single person can act as the corporate director of people, housing, health, and the statutory director of children's services. It's simply too much, and I have deep concerns that nobody could do all of that and still have due regard for ensuring the safety of children in Thurrock, even if it is just for 6 months. The additional paper that we've received this evening seems to give fundamentally the same outcome as the previous version, while simply omitting the number of job titles that the holder of the new post will take. And I have to say, the process that we've gone through to get to this point is appalling. It seems that senior officers were aware that the previous post holder was leaving for some time, and yet it's only just before a full council meeting where sweeping changes to our organisational structure are brought to our attention with no options or alternatives. And when the deputy leader of the council stands there and says, "We haven't been able to challenge this paper, it's only here under our duress," we know that something has gone very, very badly wrong at this council. And so I think whatever the decision that we make this evening, there has been a profound failure of management, leadership and communication with members. And I hope that those responsible will reflect long and hard over their role in it. Mr Mayor, I don't see how I can support the creation of a role, even as an interim, that I see as dangerous. If it is rejected by council this evening, I hope that the leadership will act swiftly and decisively to revise their planned approach and bring forward proposals that can carry the confidence of the Chamber and ensure that we continue to safeguard the children of our borough.
Thank you, Councillor Garrish. Councillor Coxon.
I was only going to say that I come in here, it's the first in 8 years now, into my third term as a councillor. It's the first time I can remember coming in where I don't know how to vote. And after conversations, and I come in today thinking, well, I should support it because of all my conversations with some of you here about it. And then I sat down and listened to the conversations here and thinking I shouldn't support this motion. And I thank you, Councillor Kent had a very good points, and Councillor Gerrish certainly does have very good points as well. In fact, I'd mention Steve Cox was appointed internally as well, which is concerning to me because obviously now Steve's left, and we need to make sure what we do in that appointment as well. So for purpose, we're discussing regeneration tonight, we're in a critical stage of delivering regeneration. It's all about the same as we did do internal appointments and the general services do interview. It was a good process and all get buy-in, and especially in three-party politics. We're here for some years into this, no overall control, and it's important to have conversations across the party to make sure that it's the seamless running of the authority and their democratic responsibilities. But I am convinced by Councillor Canardi's conversation, speech tonight, that I should really support this motion, and Councillor Fletcher, because of the consequences of that I take my responsibilities very seriously at votes, and a statutory vote to lead this authority like that, whatever happens, it should have that. And I think that is spoken tonight to vote, where, but there again, I could hear 2 more speeches and change my mind again, because I am deeply concerned and torn, and I think I leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coxon. I'll take one more speaker, Councillor Abbas.
I will oppose this to send a clear message that I only support and accept democratic decisions. I will never endorse decisions made by individuals enforced upon us on 11th hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Head, would you like to sum up?
Without a doubt, I think this has probably been the most darkest discussions I have ever had in this chamber. Without a doubt, I'm looking at John, I'm looking at Martin, Lynn, Vicky, Jane, those of us that have been here a long time. This is a low point for us. You're absolutely right, I can't remember who it was who said it about what we do in terms of members' involvement with recruitment. I think Councillor Kent labelled it particularly well. Couldn't say it in any other better way. We did have an input, and seemingly we don't seem to do any more. That's us as a membership to have that discussion, I think, about what that looks like in the future. But yeah, I think a dark day. Everyone's made their points very articulately and professionally, I think. I think let's just get on with it. The vote.
I'll read this part of it. Are members in agreement with the recommendation of the report? Right. We will now take a vote on the report. Can members clearly indicate whether they are voting in favour of the recommendation? All those in favour? Thank you. Voted against the recommendation? Any abstentions? The motion has not been carried, it's been defeated. We move on to item 11. Receive reports from cabinet members. There is one cabinet member report on the agenda this evening. The time allowed for this report is 15 minutes. We'll take one question from each member. We'll come back to those members who may wish to ask us additional question if time allows. Please can I remind members to be as brief as possible in their questions and answers to ensure that we cover as many of the questions as submitted. The report of Councillor Holden, the Cabinet Member for Education and Health, will be found on pages 27 to 44 of the agenda. Councillor Holden, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quite a heavy subject, and see if I can lighten things up. I'm honoured to stand here for the fourth time as Cabinet Member for Education and Health to report the state of the departments. After 3 years in power, Thurrock is the finalist for Council of the Year. Before I outline what this portfolio has done to contribute to that, let me take a moment to thank all staff, all teachers, all governors, all parents, all GPs, all nurses, all pharmacists, everybody who has done so much to make Thurrock such a success story. And certainly I'm extremely grateful to my amazing team led by Roger Harris, Ian Wake and Michelle Lucas. Mr. Mayor, in education, almost 3/4 of our children got their first choice of school place this year. And last year we invested over £4 million extra on school buildings and sports facilities than we initially announced in our budget. In health, we're up to 25 good GPs from just 3 years ago. And we are leading NHS partners in an £18 million new estate plan, a plan so well respected it's actually referred to as the Thurrock model. Mr. Mayor, these are departments to be proud of. And thanks to over a year now of charity runs with Councillor Watkins, when we hosted our obesity summit earlier this year, Mr. Harris said it was just about okay for me to attend. But Mr. Mayor, what I'm proudest of is that this council used a large proportion of its budget surplus to put over £1 million into adolescent mental health. That's not just about funding, that's about our values as a borough. Of course, there have been real challenges, and let me touch on two in particular. Firstly, building. Due to a political referral to the Secretary of State for our plans for new medical centres and reform of the Dorset Hospital offer, we've not made as much progress as I would have liked. Our new school building continues to be a real challenge, given the sheer scale of what we're trying to achieve. 3,500 new places is a very big figure. However, we're not just sitting out moaning, we're showing leadership. We're fighting through with ambitious plans for a massively expanded Thurrock Hospital while the referral to the Secretary of State is resolved, and investing new cash to expand some of our best schools to ensure that every child always has a school place, as they did this year. But clearly, delivery of projects is something that must pick up pace. Secondly, I've been concerned for some time about our Educational Needs and Disability Service. It's why I announced last year that I'd be embarking on a series of listening exercises where I met with dozens of teachers and parents to talk about what clearly are problems in the system. A recent Ofsted inspection has concurred with our concerns and added a few of their own. However, as I've been very, very clear, we cannot just fix the problems highlighted in an Ofsted report. We need to set out a long-term vision to be an outstanding service, not just a good service. This is work that I will personally lead on. Mr. Mayor, looking to the future, we've got some exciting work to come forward, and I've got 4 announcements I wish to make this evening. Firstly, on youth offending. We will relocate and we will expand our youth offending service, embedding its work throughout children's centres and other settings to ensure that our work to fight against youth gangs and knife issues are not just consigned to school hours or term time. Next, mental health. We are progressing on our work to fully integrate mental health and public health services within GP and community settings and hold the system to account for patients. Also, skills. We are going to take our massively successful skills offer, working with fellow Essex authorities to develop the skills locally to build the homes and the infrastructure of the future. Our intention is to position Thurrock at the heart of the South Essex Employment Strategy when we host our Skills Summit this summer. and that will also allow us to continue to deliver on the excellent work Councillor Head began with the Debt Summit. And finally, we want to ensure that what we build has true social value. As we build more homes and vital council homes, we want to expand on the success we've had with Head Start Housing, where we've helped our care leavers get on the housing ladder, work that I will undertake with Councillor Johnson. And as we build more schools, we want to ensure that education and sports facilities are a key part of the emerging council sports strategy. Mr Mayor, as you know, because I hold 2 portfolios, I wrote to you prior to full council, and I made clear that if you saw fit, I'm happy for you to extend question time to give opposition councillors additional time to grill me. Mr Mayor, Thurrock is now a leader in local government, and I'm proud what this portfolio has done on the front line to deliver a more ambitious, a more inclusive and a more resilient borough. With that, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to open for questions.
I think it's up to me to questions. Councillor Holloway, the Chair of Health and Wellbeing Open and Scrutiny Committee, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think anyone doubts Councillor Howden's passion for his portfolio, but I don't think this is a good report. I'm concerned that while I understand the size of the portfolio means that you can't put everything in, the information that should be in there for full council to see, just on the bits that have been picked out and put into the report, isn't good enough. On page 36, 1.5 paragraphs about the STP, but not mentioning the acute reconfiguration of hospitals and its impact. Nothing on primary care networks, which is one of the most important pieces of work to happen in this borough. Members need to see this sort of information, yet 2 paragraphs on page 36 saying not very much on the health and wellbeing board. I don't think this report is an acceptable account of the health portfolio. One element I am really happy to see with such prominence in this report, however, is on the mental health transformation, which leads me to my question, Mr Mayor. The improvement in our mental health services is one of the most important pieces of work. And all members sitting here should be pushing for this. This is one element of work that is being put at risk as a result of NHS England's decision to take money from Thurrock CCG and other CCGs in the region to prop up a massive overspend by Cambridge and Peterborough CCG. I'm told that Cambridge's CCG have a platinum service. We, on the other hand, are trying to work hard to deliver improved services while managing to balance our budget. NHS England will be taking £480,000 to prop up a platinum service in Cambridgeshire, while residents in Thurrock sit on waiting lists to get treatment for their mental health. How is this acceptable? How much will they take from our residents next time for a platinum service that needs another bailout? As Chair of Health and Wellbeing and Scrutiny, I'm requesting NHS England attend the next scrutiny meeting to question their decision, and I'll be writing to request they don't take money from Thurrock's residents' desperately needed service. Councillor Howden, I ask, what are you doing as the Cabinet Member for Health to try and stop our money being taken? And how are you working with Jackie Doyle-Price, our local MP, and the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State responsible for mental health to stop our residents suffering at the benefit of Cambridge's?
If I can, would you like to answer that?
First of all, I congratulate Councillor Holloway for managing to come up with a question longer than something Councillor Head would attempt. Just quickly touching on your points, why was the STP not particularly mentioned? Well, the STP plan was published in June of last year. Your committee didn't bother to actually call it in until about December, so you decided to wait 6 months without doing anything. That's why we're not delivering new medical centres at the moment, because we are still waiting for the call-in to be adjudicated on. So I don't have much to say other than thank you for wasting 6 months of our time. Why is primary care not mentioned? Well, primary care is mentioned extensively. That is how we have had a 16% increase in blood pressure checks, a 23% increase in hypertension diagnosis, and that is how we've extrapolated. We have saved the people of Thurrock about 139 strokes in the last year. So primary care is quite extensively mentioned. You asked me specifically about mental health and how the Peterborough and Cambridgeshire issue threatens us. First of all, in terms of adolescent mental health, it doesn't. That money is already committed, it is ring-fenced. There is no way anyone is getting their hands on it. Bear in mind, a big portion of that comes from us directly as a council. In terms of the adult mental health reconfiguration, the phasing will change slightly, so the rollout is going to be a couple of months delayed, so not a significant change there. And in terms of the community mental health work, trying to support EPUT getting their work out of distant locations and embedded into GP services, that work is continuing regardless. That's why we're moving forward with a redesign of the Thurrock Community Hospital, because that is the main EPUT mental health site. So the work is continuing regardless. But what I would say specifically on the Peterborough and Cambridge STP situation is, this is what happens when politicians from all parties spend decades just demanding the NHS get more money, don't hold it to account. We have to balance our budget every year by statute. The NHS doesn't. And that is why groups like Peterborough and Cambridgeshire are allowed to run outrageous deficits, and we eventually have to muck in.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Denali, the Chair of the Children's Services Administration Committee, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Upton, for your response. I know I will have an opportunity to talk to you about the SCND issues, but now, yes, you did mention it is a statutory duty of the council to ensure that every child in Thurrock has a school place. My question to you is, could you tell us the number of children that are being educated at home because schools cannot be found for them?
Yes, I don't think you could be as brief as possible, please, but by means answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's first of all important to point out that this year we fulfilled our duty, as we have done in each year of this administration. Every single child in this borough, without fail, was offered a school place in this borough. This year we created hundreds of new school places at good schools in this borough. So every child who wants a school place in this borough has been offered one. Home education has increased. There's a combination of reasons because of this. Some people simply choose to elect to educate their children at home. And obviously, because we've got 2 outstanding rated special needs schools in this borough, lots of people move here and they don't find the provision they were hoping for because the demand is so great. And that's what just inspires me even more to fight on through some of the opposition that we do see far too often to building new facilities and get the new Treetops 2 school built. £20 million investment, because that will help drive down those home education figures. But fundamentally, every single child in this borough was offered a school place this year, and they will be next year.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coffey, do you speak?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Holden, for your report. I just wanted to focus on the KPI regarding good and outstanding schools. It's disappointing, obviously, to see that we've missed the target for this year on the number of schools that have been rated as good or outstanding. And I know there is an explanatory commentary there that sort of explains some of the reasons why that might have happened. What I would like, though, is to just know from the portfolio holder that you can give us some assurance and that you have confidence that the only direction of travel for Thurrock schools going forward will be too good or outstanding, and that no school will be allowed to slip down to lower levels.
Thank you, Councillor Pothecary, for the question. Obviously, Ofsted judgments have become more rigorous, and rightly so. They should become more challenging. We are unveiling a new school improvement plan in September that we're going to consultation with the Schools Forum this month, where we're outlining what we're going to do to take some successes we have enjoyed and try and roll that out as a standard. If I can just give you an example, Hasselbrook, English results up 11%, maths results up 18%. Their combined results are 44.7%. It's 43.3% nationally. Hasselbrook is a better school than the national average, but Ofsted haven't classed them as a good school. Bit incongruous. Gateway, finally good on every single judgment. That's a judgment that could have happened 18 months ago. So, yes, you're entirely right about Ofsted. It is becoming more challenging. We can't make excuses for it. That's why we need to work even harder to hit those good judgments. But if you look at the successes this borough's enjoyed with Hasselbrook, where the results are massively up, look at Gateway, where standards are massively up. The point of our new school improvement strategy is to look at why we've enjoyed those tremendous successes and help roll them out across the board.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Spillman, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As always with a report from Councillor Howden, is the sort of Emmental reports with skillfully crafted holes in all the right places. But I'll be a bit kind. I'm really thankful for Councillor Holloway and Councillor Harring's what they've said in the press about the decision to remove the mental health funding. I started my career working in mental health services. Throughout my career, I've dealt with thousands of people at varying stages of development of mental illnesses across the spectrum. I am absolutely disgusted and enraged by this decision. And I just want Councillor, and please do not spare the rod when it comes to the people that have made this decision, but I think members need to be aware what are the services that we are now not going to have as a result of this decision. You know, what were the plans that you had for this money that we're now not going to be able to deliver for the people of Thurrock because of this outrageous decision. With mental health, early intervention is everything. Yeah? It's about mental health, a lot of mental health problems around the neurosis, those types of neurotic complaints and disorders are about learned behaviours that become repeated and obsessional. And if you can crack in early, you can deal with the situation so easy. The longer it goes on, the more difficult it is for people to change behaviours and get back on a path they want to be. This is devastating. So please, in my
Thank you, Councillor. Could you move on to summing up?
I just again need to repeat that the Peterborough and Cambridge judgment is not defunding our mental health services. The adolescent mental health service money is ring-fenced and it is still there. The work with adults is continuing. It's going to continue on a slightly different phase, but it is continuing regardless. In terms of service cuts, we have to remember we are very lucky. Our CCG is one of the few CCGs around that is in the black. Our Better Care Fund is underspent. This authority is running a budget surplus. So we are in a very strong, very resilient position to ensure we protect mental health services, to protect all services, improvements in primary care, improvements in acute care. Fundamentally, we should not be in a position where we are having to use those defences, because the NHS should not be allowing parts of the system to overspend to the point we have to bail them out. That is why this constant defence of the monolithic NHS England, regardless of standards, is entirely wrong. It is time that the NHS was forced to perform in the same way of local authorities. If they can't balance their budget, get rid of the people responsible for that deficit and bring people in who can make the NHS behave like a local authority.
Thank you, Councillor. There are two questions we don't have time for, from Councillor Worrell and Councillor Kieran. Would you be happy to send your question in to Councillor Holder? I'm sure you'd be happy to give that written reply.
I'm sure I could speak to James outside of here.
Thank you, Councillors. We now move on to item 12, questions from members to ask questions from members in order to which they can submit. We have up to 30 minutes for this item. There is one question to the leader and 12 questions to cabinet members. These can be found on pages 45 to 48 of the agenda. I please ask the members to be as brief as possible in their questions and answers to ensure that we cover as many of the questions submitted tonight. Those questions not dealt with at this meeting, the member to whom the question is addressed shall provide a written answer as soon as practical after the meeting. I would like to remind members that any supplementary question they ask must be one question that relates to the original question and not form part of the statement. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I would ask those members who have submitted questions to please read out their question when asked to do so. Question 1 to the Leader of the Council. Councillor Worrell, please read out your question as set out on page 45 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following the recent changes to the statutory guidance on overview and scrutiny in local authorities, can you advise what steps you have taken to ensure that the administration delivers on the recommendations and equips scrutiny to work effectively here in Thurrock?
Councillor Head, on behalf of Councillor Gledhill, please respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Worrell. You're probably fully aware that in May of this year we had some guidance from national government in terms of what good scrutiny looks like and good governance. The preliminary studies I'm pretty much articulating that our Councillor Worrell has it for the benefit of the minutes. And preliminary studies indicating that we fulfil a majority of those implications, but you're not asking me about that, you're asking about what the administration is going to do to support and do something different. We know that corporate overview and scrutiny, I think, has it on its work pattern, Oliver. Something that Debbie and I need to have a conversation about is how we link that discussion in. I think it's good that the corporate have taken a bit of lead in that, but equally we need to make sure that we support collaboratively with that. I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, let's speak from sorry, I can speak as an ex-chair. James, there's others around us, we're ex-chairs of overview and scrutiny. We know the power of an overview and scrutiny committee and for all the good it can bring. So hopefully that brings some confidence.
Councillor Worrell, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. So in the scrutiny training, they paid particular attention for the need for the committee to be critical friends. You know, the role of scrutiny. There should be no them and us, there should be no party colours, and no gatekeepers to head off any challenge to cabinet decisions or policies. I think the scrutiny committee should be made to feel like they are part of the democratic process, and that they're not just tick boxes, and that we see lots of this to know and when really we should be building work plans that mean something and that we can make real decisions. So what I'm asking tonight is that can we have some assurance from you that following these updated scrutiny recommendations that cabinet members work closer with the scrutiny chairs, and that we ask them to work with them and give them work programmes and items that allow the scrutiny process to be real and meaningful in this democratic process, rather than something that we just bring everything, you know, meet 4 times a year to know what you're doing, and then, you know, sometimes we even get stuff where we recommend and then it's not even mentioned. It's just those recommendations are just completely overlooked, you know, and that's not the way to run this council. So I'd just like to think that going forward we can agree that, you know, we'll work closer to make a real difference. Thank you.
I interpret it, don't worry. The answer, in short, is yes. I think there's multiple pronged responses to that, mind you. One, as a cabinet member, I can absolutely see the benefits of that. I look at the Fair Debt Summit as something that is quite a passion to me. Is there any reason why me and Oliver, or Oliver's predecessor, couldn't have worked collaboratively a bit more on that? No, is the truthful answer. You know, checks and balances, as we've heard tonight, usually is good bedfellows. The other thing I would say is, as a chair of overview and scrutiny, there is perhaps an unknown licence that the chair has in those meetings to shape the work programme. I'm going to look at Karen Wheeler, remember me as the chair. I used to say, if I get a report that says to note, I'll rip it up, put it back in the envelope and give it back, which I'm sure she'll testify to. That was in the power of me as a chair. The work programme was, you know, it was licensed for me to have what I wanted on there, but inclusively, I need to make sure the membership are around. But then conversely, is there any reason why we can't do that cross collaboration? No. Let's do it.
Councillor Worrell, do you wish to propose a second supplementary?
No, I'm fine, thank you. I trust them. Or I'll be back.
Right.
I'll take the questions that have been submitted to cabinet members. Question 1. Councillor Fish, please read out the question as set out on page 45 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Grays Riverside can experience significant traffic congestion. Can the local air quality be monitored for impact on air quality from such congestion and to inform any necessary options for improvements?
Councillor Watkins, please respond to the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fish, for your question this evening as well. I would also like to add a highly important question. I know I've got one very similar about the passing board coming up shortly. And it is something which I would like to add is very much on the forefront of my mind regarding air quality across the entirety of Thurrock. So equally I can understand the concerns which residents in Grays Riverside and also the entirety of Thurrock have got regarding this. Regarding Grays Riverside itself, air testing has been taken across the borough previously, and there was a report which went to Kim Greener back in February this year, which outlined some of the work which had happened from the initial air quality work which had taken place off the back of the work plan in 2017. Currently the council do testing based on possible pollutants
in the air, more based on tackling transport emissions currently, and then they'll do models of how that testing would look and what outcomes need to come off the back of that, which is through the NQMA. However, I'm not averse to testing. I just believe that we need to make sure that if we are going to be doing testing, that we get it right, and that the outcomes off the back of that as well also going to have an impact on the area. So what I can announce this evening is that we are going to be reopening the previous air strategy to see what more can be done and what the council can do to also tackle new issues such as the dust issue in Tilbury. If any issues like that want to occur moving forward, things making sure that the Lower Thames Crossing are included. The government have announced today plans which could affect us through the A127, which also needs to be included in this as well. Excuse me. And I also would like it to play a part in towards this new government vision. Well, it's going to become law now, but by 2050 the country will have no net emissions. And I'd like to see Thurrock play a massive part in that moving forward. We've only got 30 years, that's not long. But as I say, Mr Mayor, we are not averse to doing testing. We're going to be reopening the strategy first of all, see what more we can do, and then see what needs to be done in each of the wards moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Twitch, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. So you're reopening the strategy. Can you give me some kind of time scale as to when you can come up with some conclusions and constructive ideas to moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
And no problem, sir. Thank you, Councillor Fish, for your supplementary. At this point in time, I'm not going to give any timescales because it's not right to do so, but what I will give the guarantee, also in the spirit of which Councillor Warwick has just mentioned, which I try to do always as the portfolio holder for environment, and that all policy and options will be coming forward to Keen Agreement beforehand for any decision which this Cabinet makes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fish, do you wish to propose a second supplementary?
Yes, thank you. As part of the work of the strategy, will you be looking at low emission zones?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fish, for your supplementary. Yes, we will be looking at every possible option. And I don't also want this just to be looking at transport stuff as well. I also think we need to start incorporating business across the full clean air strategy across this borough.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to question 2. Councillor Obenale, please read out your question as set out on page 45 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. How is the portfolio holder at ensuring thorough service provision for special education needs and disabilities is fit for purpose, especially in giving proactive and proper support to children, young people and their families?
Councillor Hall, please respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Obenale, for your question. Well, as I said last year, when I announced that I was going to be inviting parents and teachers to come forward and talk to me, I'm quite aware of the fact that there are problems with the way certain parts of our SEND service function. When parents are told that they are going to get a phone call in a couple of days and that phone call happens in a couple of weeks, that is not okay. When a care plan is written and there is no oversight to whether or not that care plan has been correctly delivered, that is not okay. When we send out letters that are signed, yours sincerely, Thurrock Council, without a named point of contact, that is not okay. So the recent Ofsted inspection has concurred with our concerns. You'll know as Chair, we've already tabled to your committee the statement of action plan that we are going to take forward. But as I said in my portfolio speech, what is important for me is that we don't just become obsessed with ticking boxes that Ofsted put in front of us and just answering the concerns Ofsted have had. We need to set out a long-term vision for outstanding, and that is more of the work that we've done over the last 3 years. Establishing inclusion units in school so we don't have to send our children to pupil referral units. We can keep them in mainstream education wherever possible. Investing more in mental health, investing more in sports to allow better physical activity in school, and essentially ensuring that when we do things like intervene on the dedicated school grant, as we did to the tune of £500,000 this year, we ensure that the high needs block remains strong and stable and continues to function for the most vulnerable young people. So we need to carry on doing what we're doing. Yes, answer the Ofsted concerns to make sure it is technically fit for purpose as as a legal definition, but our ambition is much more than just fit for purpose, and that's why we started this exercise last year.
Councillor Hopper, do you wish to propose a supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Arkin, I understand what you said about you getting the key stakeholders to talk to you about what the issues are. And you've rightly admitted in your report this evening that you've been concerned about the SEND service for some time. My question is, why haven't you increased the capacity of the team to ensure the EHC plans were completed and by the March 2018 deadline?
Councillor Holt, do you wish to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if it was in an earlier draft, and perhaps it didn't make my cull, but I was trying to make the report a little bit lighter. But we did outline that we did increase capacity in the team. And yes, it is in there. The care plans are now delivering 94% of all plans within 20 weeks, which is significantly above the national average. So we did increase the capacity in the team about 6 months ago, and it is clearly bearing fruit with 94% of plans within a 20-week period. We want that 94% to be close to 100, and we want that 20 weeks to be a hell of a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Councillor Hopper, do you wish to propose a second supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes, talking about the EHC plan that you increase the capacity and it's reached 90-something%, we have to think about the quality of it. I mean, this inspection has actually highlighted that if I read from it, that it was not well thought out and quality not assured. And I personally have been a mother of an SEN child. I mean, it's grown man now. But I know that that's the beginning of everything. You have to have everything right in paper. It used to be statements. You have to have everything right in paper so that you know the type of support your child is having. And any delay in intervention or support is delay in child's development. So I just would like you, as my last supplementary question, is to assure, how can you assure all members here that you are now very confident, I put very confident, about the same service Thurrock Council is providing. If you can assure us if you're very confident about the service it's providing, that would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If you be concise in your response to the question.
Mr. Mayor, we've had a really long debate this evening about how important child safeguarding is. So if you'd actually like me to give proper answers to serious questions.
I do want to give a proper answer. I just like it to be concise.
Well, you know one or the other. What I would say is that you asked me to provide you with confidence. I can provide you with confidence that when we had our Ofsted inspection, they didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. From our own self-evaluation, we knew what the weaknesses were. Now, there are extreme strengths in our SEND service. For example, our pupils with plans are meeting the expected educational development they should do. So they are not academically suffering compared to some of their peers. But we know when we do a deep dive of some of the plans are not followed up with schools, so we don't know if the plans have been fully enacted. So we're in a situation where our young people are making the progress they should, but we don't know if that's because of the plan we put in place or whether or not it's because the school has just done a great job with that child and our plan was an absolute irrelevance. So that is what we've got to focus on, making sure that plans written aren't just of good quality, but making sure that how that they are enacted in schools is of high quality and we can actually evidence our intervention. Because if we can't evidence our intervention, it may be a case of we need to give out fewer plans and focus on other wraparound supports. So I can give you the confidence that we are aware of that issue, we are going after that issue, and as soon as we have more information, we will return to your committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 3. Councillor Gerrish, as a councillor of many percentage of apologies this evening, would you like to resubmit the question or receive a written response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take a written response, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 4. Councillor Allen, please read out your question as set out on page 45 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder please confirm the guidance he gave in his response to the question regarding the dust played in Tilbury from a member of the public on the 28th of November 2018?
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen, for your question. I'd just like to put on the record as well, thanks to yourself and Councillor Mays as well for the work you are continuing to do in Tilbury with this particular issue. I think the comments which were made back in November have been highly publicised over the last few months. And this is in response to the question which was submitted by Ms Swatch, and then the response which one gave back to that question. When the Council was made aware of the dust issue, Council took rightly advice from the relevant experts, Public Health England, the Environment Agency and the London Port Health Authority. The advice which was given to us by Public Health England at that time stated dust was annoying but not believed to be a direct risk to health. We were then given advice on what the dust was believed to be and what that was also believed to contain and where that dust was potentially coming from. It was thus assumed from that the advice which we were given that testing had been carried out to form their response, which thus then formed my response to Ms Squash back in November 2018. Following this as well, I'd just like to add, and it's been raised many times by myself to both elected members and to Ms Squash, both in the chamber and off the chamber, outside the chamber as well, that the steering group was created to both work with the internal agencies of this council, but also the agencies who operate at the Port of Tilbury to get relevant testing done, which once the steering group was made, we then found out that the statement from Public Health England, which again has been mentioned in the press previously, was potentially incorrect because they had not actually committed to any testing previously, thus their response was a bit confusing, hence the reason why the council's position continues to be and will be to get the Environment Agency and the London Port Health Authority to be doing this dust testing issue. Obviously I have written to Ms Squash since the meeting of November 2018 to further answer questions, both in regards to what was mentioned at that evening, but also further follow-up questions from that as well. And as I've already alluded to this evening, we are reopening up in air quality so that it can also look at issues like the dust issue and any other particular issue which could arise in future years.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Allen, do you wish to propose a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As the chamber, the whole of the chamber might not be aware, we are having some private tests done on this dust, which is soon to take place. I'd just like to know from Councillor Watkins, will he fully support the findings once they're made public?
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen, for your supplementary. It would be wrong of me just to outrightly say yes or no to that testing until the testing is fully done, and that I also equally received the right expert advice from Roger Harris, Ian Wake and other members of this council, which then also we can use. What I would like to say is that I fully support the work which yourself, as I say, Councillor Mays are doing in regards to this independent testing. I personally believe that this is a great use and steer for us within our negotiations and working with the Environment Agency to get this formal testing done, because at the end of the day, the Environment Agency might not like the results which come out from this, and they will, I can't predict what they're going to say, but I would hope that from whatever comes out of the independent testing which you are committing to, that they will then follow up with their own testing from this to try and back up either what your testing has said or to say otherwise. And we will be using that as well within our steering group to get their testing done.
Councillor Allen, do you wish to propose a second supplementary?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't wish to grill Councillor Watkins any further in the chamber tonight. I'm sure I'll have many more chances to do so in the coming days, weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 5. Councillor Pothbury, as Councillor Manley has sent his apologies this evening, would you like to submit the question or receive a written response?
Could I receive a written response from Councillor Manley, please?
Thank you. Question 6. Councillor Pothbury, please read out the question as set out on page 46.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Does the portfolio holder for housing believe that the service charges council tenants and leaseholders currently pay deliver value for money?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Pothbury. All the services and works delivered on behalf of the council are procured in line with the council's constitution to ensure value for money is achieved. with leaseholders being formally consulted as part of the procurement process in line with Section 20 of the Landlord Tenant Act. Tenant service charges are paid as part of their rents, and residents are charged only for the services provided. And we'll work hard to ensure that the charges are reasonable and represent value for money. There's a clear service charge settings policy developed in consultation with tenants as set out in the Housing Act. And leasehold service charges are applied as prescribed in the leases as defined by legislation. And in accordance with the terms of our leases, the service charges are reviewed annually to ensure the charges reflect the cost of the service provided. So, in short, in answer to your question, Councillor, yes, I do believe that the service charges council tenants and leaseholders pay deliver value for money.
Councillor Crocker, if you wish to propose a supplementary question.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your response, Councillor Johnson. I'm really interested in the phrase you used, which is that service charges should only be for the services provided. I feel you know where I might be going with this, but in my own ward, for a period of over 4 weeks, the front entry door system of my Boxing House was completely out of action. This is an entry system that my residents are billed for on an itemised basis as a service provided for them. It wasn't provided for a month. We've also had situations at the Echoes where a lift was out of action for even longer than that period. Yes, I do. I promise I have. And, for example, on Secret Rise, you'll be aware that residents were without TV areas for 2 weeks.
Is that a question or just another statement?
No, I'm coming to my question, I promise. As tenants and leaseholders are billed for these as individual items, and it's based on the service that is allegedly provided, will they be reimbursed when they are not in fact provided for significant periods of time?
That's true.
Thank you, Councillor, for your supplementary. If the service isn't provided and someone's being charged for it, I, like yourself, would expect to get some kind of refund. It's certainly something I will sit down and speak to the officers about. There may be some legal issues in there that, as I'm not a legal person, I may not know about. But I will certainly sit down with them and speak to them. But if we apply logic rather than politics, I would expect to get a refund if I'm paying for a service that I don't get.
Councillor Crocker, do you wish to propose a second supplement?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think that's very sensible given the stated policy and would reflect the policy decisions that this administration has made around service charges. So I await your response, your conversation with officers eagerly. My second supplementary question is about how we actually get leaseholders and tenants more involved in the setting of service charges. I know that there are certain statutory consultation methods that are used, but actually the feedback that I get day in, day out is people saying, with these charges just keep going up. Every year they're going up. We don't feel we're getting a service that is equivalent. They feel that there's a lack of transparency, they feel that there isn't value for money, and they feel that when they complain they're kind of brushed off. Is there a way that we can actually get leaseholders and tenants much more involved in the setting of those charges and the evaluation of whether or not they are value for money?
Councillor Tom.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your supplementary. Once again, I think I have to refrain from giving an answer because of any legalities that are in there, but I have a paper here in front of me that will be coming to the Council quite soon about the Thurrock resident engagement. So over the last 18 months, there's been a number of events being put on, and we're working with the Tenants Excellence Panel for I think the past 15 years. So yes, these things are being put out more to the residents, and we are trying to listen to more of their input. However, I said on a legal basis, whether they can actually be involved in the settings of those charges, that's something I have to take advice on as well. But I would like to make it clear that there's no profit made in the charges that come back to the council. We don't make a profit out of that. They are only charged for what we are charged. I hope that helps.
Moving on to question 7. Councillor Redsall, please read out the question as set out on page 46 of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The residents of Woodside welcome the potential expansion of Treetop School, but not the additional traffic this will cause on local roads around Woodside. Will education work with the Education Skills Funding Agency, ESFA, so that a permanent means of access can be considered and therefore divert traffic away from residential roads?
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Redsall, for your question. Clearly, the £20 million that we're going to spend building Treetops 2 is money that has to be spent directly on the school and not on associated infrastructure works. However, directly opposite the site, we're spending an additional $20 million to deliver the new Walsall Academy. What I've asked officers to look at in the pre-application stage is it possible to look at these two schemes in conjunction to see if a infrastructure solution between the two schemes can be found. And they are working on that at the moment and in conversations with the EFSA. What I would say is that quite clearly new schools will mean new children, will mean increased traffic. That's the way of the world wherever you build a school. We want to do as much as we can to alleviate the road situation for local residents, while at the same time saying it's an amazing thing that we are delivering a brand new special needs school in your ward, which I know is something that you very much welcome wherever you are.
Councillor Redsall, do you wish to propose a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Holden. I just want to ask that you help to keep the dialogue open between education and highways, just for the residents and schools of Blackshots and Thurrock. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
I certainly will, but I understand that you probably meet with my officers even more often than I do.
Moving on to question 8. Councillor John Kent, as Councillor Manny has sent his apologies this evening, would you like to resubmit your question or receive a written response?
I will resubmit, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Kent, question 9. Please read out your question as set out on page 46 of the agenda. I'd just like to remind everybody that we only have 2 or 3 minutes left at the most on this subject, so could we keep it as brief as possible?
As part of the planning consent for the new development of the former Treetop School site in Grays, a parcel of land was to be transferred to the Land Trust and a management strategy agreed for the woodland area to make it available for public access via walkway and viewing platform. This land does not appear to have been transferred, and the viewing platform is now vandalised on a regular basis. Residents are subjected to constant antisocial behaviour on this unprotected land. Can the portfolio holder explain why the land transfer has not taken place and set out the steps that he intends to take to ensure that that now happens quickly?
Councillor.
Thank you very much. The council relinquished the freehold and interest into this Treetop site in 2016. So the actual land was sold to Keepmo. Keepmo had the planning consent on there in 2016, and it's subject to a 106 agreement. You are quite right. In accordance with the 106 agreement, the woodland area is due to be transferred to the Land Trust for future management. At this time, the land has not been transferred to the Land Trust, and remains, but it does remain the responsibility of Keepmo, not this council. The officers have written to Keepmo to remind them of their 106 obligations and their responsibility in the meantime until it's transferred.
Thank you, Councillor Cottrell. John Kent, do you wish to ask a second question? Councillor Kent.
Mr. Mayor, the mission statement for the Dell says that the Dell is a place where the local community can enjoy quiet recreation and wildlife conservation. It's anything but quiet. People there are putting up with drug taking, vandalism on a regular basis. The viewing platform is regularly vandalised. I'm afraid I have to repeat the question. Mr. Mayor, what is the portfolio holder going to do to enforce the Section 106 agreement that this authority insisted upon?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cox, could we be as brief as possible because we are due to finish?
It's going to be very brief. The officers have written to Keepmo to remind them of their responsibilities.
Thank you, Councillor Cobb. We're now at time for discussion now. Following those members with questions outstanding, whether they would like a written response or withdraw their question or issue related to that. Councillor Fletcher.
I would like a written response, please.
Councillor Atkinbow.
I would like to give some response.
Councillor Muldown.
I'd like a written response, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Item number 13, reports from members representing council on outside bodies. Any report? Thank you. Moving on to item 14, minutes of committees. These are listed on the agenda comments page. Does any member wish to speak? No, thank you. Motions update report. The next item will be found on page 4950 of the agenda is an information report on the status of motions resolved at the council. Does any member wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, page 49, motion dated the 31st of 10th 2018 in connection with the parking along Lodge Lane. We're told in the update that a possible solution has been identified, that those options have been considered in consultation with the portfolio holder, that it's been through the delegated decision report process and a decision taken to revoke restrictions and implement a red rule. Mr. Mayor, nowhere in that process have ward members been involved, been informed, been consulted. There are now letters going out to residents of Lodge Lane. Ward members are getting questions from residents and we know nothing again about it. Once again, members of this authority have been treated with utter contempt and it's just not good enough. When ward members don't be briefed on this.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Noted and moving on to motion one. Councillor Potter, do you wish to propose and then speak to the motion as printed on page 51 of the agenda?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. The motion reads, Thurrock Council notes opposition to the proposed plans to redevelop the civic offices. Thurrock Council calls on Cabinet to abandon this costly and unnecessary project.
Is that so? Would you like to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I will reserve my right to speak until later in the debate.
Does any other member wish to speak on the motion? Oh, I'm sorry. That's a problem. Could you explain why?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've heard tonight from a representative from Thurrock Estate Residents Association, which surrounds this office and these offices. We've also seen a gathering outside of concerned residents from across the borough here tonight. We also have month in and month out with different councillors who are pleading for more investment in things that really matter to their communities. One look at the letters page of the Gazette or social media comments attached to any story or article on this topic will show that there is serious opposition to this plan. People out there simply cannot understand why we would be spending £10 million in an age of austerity on a new council building. And yet, this council seeks to push ahead with spending at minimum £10 million on a new building for councillors to sit in. At a time when the council is actively discouraging residents from coming to the civic offices, our residents are expected to put the bill for a grand entrance we don't even want them to use, only will this project spend precious money on a white elephant, it will also have a devastating effect on our heritage. Essex County Council's Built Heritage Consultant states the plan will, and I quote, remove the last legible vestiges of the historic character of the High Street in what is the historic core of Grays. Should the proposed plans be approved, the area will be dominated by large modern buildings, leaving the listed church isolated and removed from its historic context. End quote. All to replace a building that is 30 years old. The independent business owners who have worked so hard to build their businesses from scratch on that corner are devastated. All their hard work and pride in their achievement, their striving to support their families and create new jobs and amenities has all come to naught. Their livelihood set to be demolished so that councillors can have plush new offices. In the past few years, an increasing and troubling distance has grown between the people of Thurrock and this council which should seek to serve them. Let's start putting that right tonight by saying, actually, we care more about making your quality of life better, we care more about improving your communities than we do about giving ourselves fancy new offices. Let us say we're going to put you first and cancel this fantasy project. I would urge all members to support the motion.
Any other members of the Councillor Thurrock?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Chair of the Corporate and Scrutiny Committee, I continue to have grave concerns about this project. And in my mind, the biggest concern is the lack of detail on the business case that surrounds this whole venture. Now, if it transpired that actually there was a profitable return to the Council from this investment, then that would be one thing. However, no one has provided sufficient explanation of what the benefits of this project are. The costs, we know, are considerable, at least £10 million, and many of us suspect it could be much more than that, of capital investment, of which around £7 million currently could be feasibly spent on other capital projects if this were cancelled. Combined with the loss of local businesses, it seems that the benefits to the Council should be enormous to justify such a decision. And yet we are simply told that the new civic offices would be good for the regeneration of the town centre. Is there something that we're not being told? Because I just do not see how this adds up. I don't need a new chamber and group offices or a £200,000 improvement. Never has a resident stopped me and said, you know, what Grays Town Centre really needs is a new council chamber, or that the entrance should be moved 30 metres round the corner. But what I do see is the need for improving the local infrastructure for our residents, delivering community value, not newer offices for council. That amount of money could go a very long way towards some of our community needs if it was spent on HGV mitigation or parking solutions or even tackling air quality. Mr Mayor, whatever the vote this evening, I do ask that the administration comes forward with a real business case for this change and puts it to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for further consideration before the scheme advances. That's what we asked for when it was considered by the committee last year, and that's what we've written again on behalf of the committee to the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council this week to ask more. Now more than ever, we must spend wisely and achieve good value for money. With the information that we have so far, I do not see how the Civic Offices project can possibly do this.
Thank you. I will be voting for this motion wholeheartedly, and I speak like Councillor Pothecary and Councillor Fish. This affects my ward directly. And I don't just see this building, I think of my residents who live nearby, I think of all my friends and neighbours on Seabrook Rise and Clarence Road and all the roads coming off of it, whose lives will be disrupted by this project. And if it goes through, the associated parking issues with the flats that are down here on this tiny parcel of land as well. We're spending needlessly on a building that is neither wanted nor needed. It's fit for purpose. This plan isn't fit for purpose. If anyone's interested in how we could spend 10 million on our ward, then myself, Councillor Pothecary, Councillor Fish and our residents would be more than happy to give advice. It certainly isn't on the list. Come and speak to us and we'll give you our shopping list. Thank you.
and I've got in Worrell, Councillor Worrell has said we don't use overview scrutiny. Well, I do, because I see they're sending overview scrutiny's chair of the overview scrutiny committee, we talked to this last week, considers the move to the registry office in the Thameside and Speedway as an opportunity. So considers that what we're doing, and one of the things, is an opportunity to move the registry office into the new civic zone. So I think we should really consider what the overview scrutiny does, and some of the points there are exactly what I'm going to outlay now. 2 years ago, we all agreed in this table, 49, that we should have fewer buildings, better services. And this just does exactly that. With sound finances, there's no better for the next 4 years here, there's no better time to actually go to move our plans forward, and this is one of these projects. This project increases opportunities in Greystown Centre and unlocks the potential for much needed residential homes, just here. Unlocking the development at the Thameside Theatre to have much improved theatre provision, which is missing. Yeah, we have not got a theatre, that is part of it. We need to actually increase the size of it. Moving the registry office into the civic offices will do just that. The new homes are really needed here. We have never really needed here to make sure that our people, our next generation, can afford or rent a house. And what we will do here, just this small amount of houses here, and the homes here, will increase that every home we have in town centres will deliver less greenbelt. And I know Councillor Rice on our planning committee week after week says that we must start building some homes and we've got to build a greenbelt, but this is an opportunity not to, so this is an ideal opportunity as well to build in the town centres. We've never made the most of South Grays for years and years. We've never made the most of the really beautiful 800-year-old church, which is covered. We've never made the most of the sixth form college, which is now being built in now. With a great piazza and green space that's on there, with a great visitor entrance in the right place near the train station and in the High Street, we can regenerate that's Grey South High Street. I hear that the civic offices doesn't matter to the residents, and they ask me why. Well, I don't think it is a priority for residents. But we're not here, what we're here is leaders of it and deciding what is best. And what we should be doing is actually regenerating, which was agreed. It was agreed that the Grays regeneration is an agreed item of all 49 that we must regenerate Grays. And we must agree, we all agree that Grays is a growth hub. And a growth hub means we've got to move forward. And I'd like to remind you some of the others. This is a small part of growth, of Grays regeneration. We hear day in, day out about Grays High Street. Everyone's embarrassed about going down Grays High Street. That means we've got to do something about it. And I'll just stop there. Yeah.
Please,
sum up. I'm just doing one line. We need the new foot crossing. Is coming at £30 million. A new Grey Station leisure area, £11 million. New shopping centre, £90 million. A new sixth form. A new Thameside Theatre. A new State Theatre. A new market. What we need is to pass the thing and make Grays great again. What's wrong with that?
Councillor Coxall. Don't need a car, do we? I'm rather disappointed in your not respecting the wishes of the Mayor.
You said time up.
No, I did say time up, and I did say your name 3 times, so please in the future can you... it's now 21:30, so we've and it's closed for the meeting. The report item that...
Sorry, Judge, I just clarify something. I don't know, because we've had an adjournment that has basically suspended the meeting. Does that not mean?
If I could, I allowed the adjournment because we were ahead of the time schedule. So we were ahead of, at that time we were ahead of the schedule. And I used the time that we saved previously in the meeting to allow that So if I can continue it. Any report items outstanding deemed formally moved and seconded shall be put to the vote without debate. Members with motions still to be heard can either speak on the motion for no more than 3 minutes before the motion will be put to the vote without debate, or they may withdraw the motion and resubmit for the next available meeting. So if we can go to the vote on the motion 1.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. like to request a requisition vote, please.
Requisition vote. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll call councillors and you can indicate whether you're for, against or abstain. Councillor Abbas.
For.
Councillor Akabone.
For.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Baker. For. Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Shopworth.
For.
Councillor Collins.
Against.
Councillor Copshaw.
Or against.
Councillor Fish.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Gerrish.
For.
Councillor Howden.
Against.
Councillor Hemp.
Against.
Councillor Holloway.
For.
Councillor Hewlin.
Against.
Councillor Jeffries.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Cathy Kent.
For.
Councillor John Kent.
For.
Councillor Kerrin.
For.
Councillor Lawrence.
Against.
Councillor Lydiard.
For.
Councillor Little.
Against.
Councillor Massey.
For.
Councillor Mains.
For.
Councillor Muldowney.
For.
Councillor Okanade.
For.
Councillor Piglow.
Against.
Councillor Apothecary.
For.
Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Ralph.
For.
Councillor Redsell.
Against.
Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Rigby.
Yes.
Councillor Salmons.
Against.
Councillor Schmidt.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Spillman.
For.
Councillor Van Dijk.
Against.
Councillor Watkins.
Against.
And Councillor Moore.
For.
Motion is agreed. Item 2. From Councillor Hooley. Do you wish to speak for 3 minutes, or do you wish to withdraw the motion and resubmit for the next available meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak and then just go straight to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, there was another bit of protocol there. I'll read the motion. The Thurrock Council establishes a working group for the next 5 years to ensure events of the Second World War are appropriately commemorated in Thurrock. Councillor Kent put forward a similar motion that established what became a very successful working group to ensure events of World War I were commemorated. And I've been honoured to chair that group of enthusiastic people formed of veterans, British Legion members, councillors, officers, museum staff and volunteers. And they've done some fantastic work, and they're still doing some fantastic work. My mother and father were just 18 months old when news of the Second World War was imminent. And my mother boarded a ship at Gravesend Docks and was evacuated north, whilst my father's family opted to stay, and he remembers the fact of Britain. They're now 82 years old, and the people that served and worked and fought in that war are older still. It is vital that we honour all veterans and those that made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. I'd like those with a vote in council today to allow these good works to carry on by agreeing for a working group to be established for a further 5 years to ensure events of the Second World War are also aptly commemorated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewlin. All those in favour? please stand for the formal close of the meeting. Concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I'll declare the meeting closed.